All right, so let's unpack then some of those appointments. We're joined by Newzroom Afrika's politics editor, Lukhanyo Calata. Lukhanyo, good evening. Thanks for coming into studio. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, go straight to it. Sihle Zikalala staying as part of this provincial cabinet, now serving as MEC. One wonders how that relationship is going to play itself out.
Look, I think Sihle is, what he told us when he resigned was that he remains a party man, you know, and he did not want to be the center of attention or want to burden the party with nefarious things, basically. I can't remember his exact words. A politician
said something and you believed it?
No, but that's what he said. So now he's, and the new leadership has kept him on, which I think is a very good move, because I think he was obviously premier, so he understands the inner workings of the provincial government, but also critically, the position in which they kept him in, or at least which they moved him in, which is Kokta, means that he will continue to try and assist those families who were devastated by the floods. And that he will have an understanding, obviously, as the former premier, of just how exactly where the money is, what the problems are in assisting these communities, and hopefully he will then use his tenure in that office to really get down, because he won't really have as much on his plate, as he did when he was premier. So now he can actually get down to business and really help those communities.
Of course, we're seeing that KZN really being committed to gender parity in as far as the representation of that legislation and how it's constituted currently. 6 women out of 10 is really a big shift from where things looked like a month ago.
And that's important. I think KZN has somewhat been lagging behind other provinces in terms of allowing women the opportunities and the space to actually lead. So I think this leadership, what they're trying to do is to say we are respectful and we understand the role that women can play in positions of leadership. And look, here we are allowing the space for them to actually grab the bull by the horns and lead this province. And I think the floods, as well as the July unrest, did a lot of damage to KZN. And we all know that women are much better nurturers than men. So I think when all of these ministries now are led by women, we are likely to see a much more caring side of this provincial government coming and stepping to the fore. At least that's what we're hoping for. And I think also politically, it plays well into the new leadership's hands to say, yes, we as the provincial, as the PEC, we're dominated by men, but at least the government that we lead, as you can see, is dominated by women.
It was said just after Ravi Pillay had resigned that part of what we're seeing is effectively a purge of sort of leaders that were seen as close or aligned to the former premier, Sihle Zikalala. Now that there's a clearer picture, we can see who's in, we know who's out. What do you have to say about that?
Look, reshuffles always means that someone is going to lose out. You know, someone will win, but some people lose out. Unfortunately, in this case, it's Kwazulu-Natal, who was Education MEC, as well as Nomusa Dube-Ncube. You know, this is part of what happens to in reshuffles. And I do think, obviously, that the PEC. Look, I'm not sure what was happening behind closed doors with the horse trading and everything, but I do think that the PEC would have said, okay, yes, we have to purge, but we are removing 2 men and installing 2 women. It's not that bad, because ultimately what we do want to see is that we want to see women in the forefront and leading our society.
I found it interesting that the DA has already issued a statement saying that while they believe that the provincial cabinet of KZN has lost some of its stronger representatives, especially talking about Nomusa Dube-Ncube and Kwazulu-Natal, that they were some of the harder working members in the province.
Well, let's give the new guys a chance, all right? I think, yes, Kwazulu-Natal worked hard, Nomusa as well, but let's give them a chance. Let's see how it is that they actually go. And then maybe like after a year, we can then come back and say, well, maybe it wasn't that smart an idea to replace these two. Yes, of course, politics came into it. And played a critical role with the reshuffling out of the provincial executive of Usbiya and Mshengu. But they have been replaced by women, and this is the thing that we have been saying as a society, that we need to see women being allowed and given the space to step up, step to the fore, and lead us. Because we've seen, in most cases, we've seen where we end up when we're led by men. So let's try something different.
Is the Taliban in charge of KZN government?
Oh, of course. Of course, because look, I don't necessarily think that the new premier, Nomusa Dube-Ncube, is going to make critical decisions without obviously going back to the chairperson, Nomusa Dube, and saying, okay, listen, this is what we're thinking about pursuing. Should we do this? I think it will be inclusive, but I think it's clear that the faction now known as the Taliban, they are definitely in charge.
He's in the economic development portfolio now.
Who's this?
It's Nomusa Dube. Or was I seeing things incorrectly there?
No, I think so. Yes, ma'am. Look, economic development. That usually gets the bulk of the money. Right. So obviously, as the leader of the party in the province, he's not going to go to health, and we've seen these things. And what we as journalists and what we as the media need to look out for is to how that portfolio goes from here on out, because we know Duma does not have experience within government. This is his first stint. So we're going to have to keep a close eye on it. And then obviously after a year or so, we can then judge as to whether or not that was a good move.
Does it not make the reporting lines somewhat complex, especially because things are a particular way within the ANC and there are clear reporting lines, and then when you move to the provincial government, there's a different way in which those relationships are constructed by virtue of position, but you could well still have the same power lines in the party that play themselves out in the government.
That is a very complex thing. It's a very, very complex thing, and it's going to be interesting to see how this KZN plays that out. But think of it like this. Duma is a complete novice within government. And then you get someone like Dube-Ncube. I mean, she's experienced. As an MEC, she's been there, she's done that. She's a former ambassador, I think, to the Czech Republic. You know what I mean? So she's someone who understands the systems of government and governance. So I think in this instance, she will be able to lead up until a point, but ultimately I think the decisions will still then be made at the provincial headquarters, which, so it's going to be interesting, it's going to be complex, but I'm hoping that this new leadership will put the people of KZN first, and that the decisions that they take will ultimately to be in service of the people of KZN instead of putting the party before the people.
Just another day in the world of politics, isn't it? Our Newzroom Afrika politics editor, Lukhanyo Calata.